Hello, everybody. I'm Srivalli Arthilgut, and I have with me my colleague Nagbhushan. We are from the quality organization of Intuit. And while the aroma of good food fills the room, we will build your appetite on software testing. So we will walk you through a journey that we undertook to build confidence in our releases. So it's a learning from the past, and as we prepare for a better future. So we are from the QuickBooks Online team, which is an accounting application for small businesses. And over the past year, we had several escapes into production. The escapes could be because of bad coding practices, or it could be because of environment-specific issues, or it could be just the complexity, multiple languages, multiple releases across the globe. So our performance degradation and things like that. And as you all know, we have several things to make a better release. And some of them are, we have unit tests, we have code coverage, we do an impact analysis, we have a comprehensive automation tests, we have functional tests. So we picked our brains and thought, what is it that we are missing? We have so many of these in place, but there must be something missing because of which there are still some escapes into production. So we hit upon our old friend, the log files. They are in the servers. As Lee Copeland said this morning, it was an intake surprise. We were surprised by the huge amount of information that is there in the log files and the way that it guided us to some of the errors that were escaped into production. So my colleague Nagbhushan here will walk you through a quick checklist of what are the 5 different things that we did and how we brought about a cultural mindset change within the team of engineers to start looking and acting on the log files and the benefits that we derived out of it.
Just to start with, this is a lightning talk. In case if you don't see the lightning, it's not our fault. It should be the monsoon. The conference is set in monsoon, in a rainy season. So just to start with the list of activities, what we had done as part of this case study. So capturing the right information in the logs, as Srivalli said, this is our old friend, but what is missing, we just started with filling on the gaps which were missing in the log files. Then we started with choosing the appropriate tools to mine the logs, because log files are huge. Normally the traditional way of testing, I'll be speaking on the list of these points which we can fill on the gaps on what we had really done around these points. Then proof of concept of analyzing the data. Now we know what to analyze or what tool we had chosen. Then we went upon proof of concept on analyzing on what we are doing. Then is socializing the culture. When we know what we are doing, are we doing right? When we know we are doing right, we went on broadcasting that one. And the last step is extending that to the production environment to reap the benefits. As we were talking of capturing the right information, log file is something which all of us knew. That is looking beyond UI actually. So what we're missing is some of the prominent information which were not there in the log files. Not every module, not every workflow, not every method or action is captured in the log file. So we emphasized on that one to capture as part of the log file. So a couple of the examples are written here. So when you know everything is captured in the log file, when you really sit with the peers of development team and all other folks, when you got all the information in the log file, you just cannot read them on your own, the whole chunk of data. So what you need is either a tool, either a proprietary script, or either an open source or a paid tool to actually analyze the data on behalf of you. Normally in traditional testing, we look at the log files which runs like a racing car while we are doing. But that is something which we cannot do when there are many testers or when a whole chunk of team hitting the application. So to analyze the data which is available, immensely available in the log files, we hit upon a tool called Splunk. As one of the tools, we can write our own proprietary scripts to actually message the data. So Splunk is one of the tools which actually messages or passes the data which is available in the log file. Now it is up to us to write the script or regex expressions to get what we need. And log files exceptions are an early indication of a health of an application. You can clearly make out the quality by just looking at the log file data. So when we start analyzing the data, now we know what we have captured. Now we have a tool which analyzes the data, which actually gets what we want. Now we need to sit and analyze what it is giving it to us in response. So the queries what we are writing, is it just pulling out whatever is there in the log file, or is it just pumping out what we actually need to certify the quality? So when we make sure, these are all the points which we really hit upon on the number of exception count, and is it a genuine exception? Are there any false alarms? Then we actually wipe out any of the false alarms to make sure that as part of the tool which generates the report, it generates the clean data which is necessary for certifying the product. So when we know that it is giving us the right information, then we hit upon spreading that awareness, the benefit of it to the whole team. So this we can do with several ways. One of such ways is creating auto-generated email templates which can be spread across to the QA team on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a weekly basis based on the time frames. And it is not an easy thing because you need to bring in the change in the mindset, and people has to continuously analyze the data which has been pumped into them. And as part of this case study, and when we broadcasted it to the wider team, what are the benefits which we really got are listed here. I can just summarize this in a few minutes. On every release or release, the increment of bug count increased by 25, number of bugs specific to exceptions which were lying in the logs, which were not covered earlier part of the releases. Then up-leveling the skill of QA fraternity. This is making them to look beyond UI. That's what it says here. Then the faster debugging. As we know, when we just raise a bug, all development folks, all they need is what happens inside. Do you have an information, in logs, what caused this? And when you give this information right away, they'll be happy, and it will be it's not just bringing the happiness in there, the faster addressing skills of the bug, which we are improving here. Then, especially when the product is wide and when it is large, when it is shipped to multiple regions, log files are very important. That gives you lots of values by uncovering issues at the early stage. And these are all the steps what we are talking in pre-prod. When we extend this to production, normally when a product is shipped to the production, only in few hours we test the sanity check of the production environment, whether things are fine or not. When we really look at the log data, it gives immense data or confidence in certifying the product in production. So mining the production log is something which is prominent and which we have seeded as part of our release cycles. And production logs, as I was talking, that's one of the immense benefit what we have reaped. This is all about I have to say. Thanks for listening, and we are open for questions.
So the bottom line is get those logs to work for you. Don't just let them lie, and experience those aha moments which we saw. There are so many behavioral patterns that you can derive from the log files that we normally do not test on a regular day-to-day basis. The kind of data that our users enter in production sometimes will give you those aha moments. So don't let those log files lie. So any questions? I see hands going up.
So, yeah, the case study is very good, interesting. But have you thought about the automation kind of tool or monitoring kind of tools to avoid such a kind of incidents?
Yeah, so we went with one of the available tools in the market. Of course, it is also possible to do the same thing with proprietary automated scripts to parse the log files for the information that we are looking for. This has been scheduled to run on a regular basis and alert the necessary folks on a regular basis. And this is plugged into our pre-production and as well as our deployments and production environments.
So are you planning to use any automation tool or a monitoring tool like APM tools to such issues to find out?
Yeah, the tool that we are using is a shelved tool. It's bought from the shelf. It provides inbuilt capabilities to write regex expressions. So you can automate using the language of the tool itself.
Just to add to that, it is an automated process. We do not trigger the emails manually. It's the tool which normally passes the data on its own, which is lying in the log files, which is lying in our servers. It messages the data, it forms a filtered email, and it pumps into the fraternity. It's a process. Yes, please.
In my case, if there are no logs at all generated by an application, like a Flex application used by a client, and the call is never been made to a server, so how does your bulletproofing a release supports it?
I'll take it. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Would you like to take it? So that's a very good question. Normally, what we are talking is on the server-side calls, what it is, messaged or passed. But there are, the Splunk even observes the client-side exceptions also. The client-side scripts or the client-side entries also be captured. It's not just the app log. It's also the client-side logs which will be captured.
Okay, I think we'll have to take follow-up questions offline. I think we have one more question at the back.
Hi, thank you for the very lightning session. I have very one fundamental question. Whatever Lee and Keith today morning they were emphasizing, testing, especially from the cultural change perspective, they have to look more towards the business and business assurance with respect to building the product or an application which can serve the purpose of end business users. With that perspective, if you are suggesting the testing team to step back and look into the technical aspects, which are development team's baby, are we not just detouring the team to take the technical path rather than the business assurance path?
Great question. I could take that. This may sound technical to a developer, but at the same time, for a test engineer, it adds more value. So for us, we were very clearly able to see what were the workflow patterns that our end users were doing in production. And those were the aha moments for us when we said, this is a gap. I don't think we tested our workflow in this manner. But our user out there sitting in Philippines is using our product like this. There are so many kinds of data that our end users are pumping in. We probably test with the most commonly used type of tax codes, but when we look at our logs, there were like several different types of taxes and amounts that were being entered. That it's an eye-opener for a test engineer to bring in that behavioral change.
Okay, one to add to my earlier question, do you emphasize upskilling the testers from the reviewing the log files or application server messaging or things like that? Or do you emphasize the testers to look from the business perspective? What is the domain? What is the customer business is doing? How I can, interpret their business and ensure that the application is being implemented in such that, so that all the business aspects are being taken care, then the, technical log files. So what do you emphasize when we are looking at upskilling the testers?
Good question. It reminded me of the keynote on Wednesday from Srinivasan Desikan, where there's the developer, the tester, and the customer. So this is somewhere in the intersection of the developer, the tester, and the customer. It is right in the sweet spot. So for a developer, it gives the technical background that he or she needs to fix it faster. And as a tester, I'm able to kind of get my motivation by seeing that bug fixed and delivering value for the customer. But at the same time, as a test engineer, that intersection between the test engineer and the customer, the sweet spot there, this tool tells us how our customer is using. We cannot, sitting here in one location, we possibly cannot see how the customers around the globe are using our product. But silently monitoring the logs and seeing how the events are coming in, what is it that this user is clicking, and what is he doing after this, and what pages are he navigating, what kind of data he or she is pumping in. So that gives immense business value as a tester. So this is right at that sweet spot of the developer, tester, and the customer.
One last question. Okay. Actually, I have 2 questions because there is no follow-up. So I have only one chance. So my first question is, see, when you say that the log files help you to understand the type of data being fed by the end user. Now here, see, I agree with it. But don't you think it's a gap in the requirement, which we have not been tracked? We don't know what type of data is being fed, what type of data is the end user is going to feed. There is something is missing. It's not only that it's telling the behavior, it's also telling the requirements are not gathered properly. The second thing is you talked about the tool Splunk. Like, now, what type of log files are fed? Is this a product which takes the behavior and generates a log files, or you are generating a log file and feeding to the tool so it can generate graphs? Because I saw there is a slide which says it generates graphs and values which will give you the behavioral patterns of the end users.
Right. Just to start with the second question, Splunk is yes, we feed log file information to the tool, and we write the regex expression, basically the script, which the way we want. Now, it's a terabyte log file which is available there. We cannot read it. Now, Splunk reads it, but how we are telling Splunk to get only the exception, only the warnings, only the errors, that kind of information we want from the terabyte information, maybe from 1 day, 1 week, 1 year. So that part of information it generates. Now we need to authenticate, is it generating the right data? So that's what the tool does basically. And it generates a dashboard, whatever the way we want, and it triggers the email also. That's what the other question where the automation parts comes into picture.
In the interest of time, we will answer your question, the gentleman here, offline.
Offline, yeah. Thanks for all the questions. It's so interesting.
And